Yeah, it's 6:30 right now. There you are in the athletic look.
Hello there, Commissioner Dick.
Hi, Kevin.
No, we don't let Kevin speak into a live mic. No.
Okay, is everybody all set? IT's all set. Kevin, how you doing? You're all set too? Okay. We're good to go? Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, July 28th evening meeting of the Washington County Board of Commissioners. Our clerk, Kevin Moss, will now take announcements and take the roll.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. The Board of County Commissioners of Washington County, also serving as the governing body of Clean Water Services and all other county service district, is now meeting in regular session, July 28th, 2020. Commissioner Willie.
Here.
Commissioner Rogers.
Here.
Commissioner Treese.
Here.
Vice Chair Scouten.
Here.
Chair Harrington.
Here. Thank you, Commissioner Scouten, for joining us in the meeting via Zoom. We appreciate your taking time out of your holiday to join us.
You're welcome.
I first want to start with a couple of agenda announcements. The first thing we're going, in terms of changes, after I go through these announcements, we as a board are going to take a comfort check on a letter to the state forest land, or dealing with the state forest trust lands. Thank you, Commissioner Scouten, for bringing that forward to us. Then, in order to deal with some level of efficiencies, we're going to have the public hearing on item 4A, which is the charter amendment. That one is for the salaries. And then we'll go through that and then take action on 5B. We're going to put the public hearings and the actions close to one another. Then we'll have item 4B, the public hearing on the charter changes for land use ordinances. And then subsequent to that, we'll take action on 5C. After that, we'll have item 5A, the Washington County Kids Proposal, and then item 5D, as in dog. Just a couple of other changes. I want to make everyone aware that with item 5C, that Exhibit A and B changed from the first published packet for this meeting. Each were revised, and that had been on page 32. Item 5D, Exhibit A changed. Then on the consent agenda, item F, as well as item G, the links were added for the bid awards. The other thing we're going to do this evening is, in anticipation of testimony, we're going to have the 2 public hearings, and then for testimony on item 5A, we're going to take the testimony for that topic then, as opposed to during oral communication at the beginning of the meeting. And that's it for agenda announcements. Is everybody with me? My commissioners are okay?
Yep.
Okay. I just want to also make sure that Commissioner Scouten had the opportunity of receiving the various community letters that we've gotten on these items by email.
I believe I have.
Okay, thank you. Now then, we'll move on to the letter from the board to the State Forest Trust lands. Each of the commissioners were provided with a copy of this letter. Are there any questions from commissioners? If not, is everyone thumbs up? Okay. Commissioner Scouten, we're all set then. We see your thumbs up as well, and so I will sign that on behalf of the board. Thank you. All right, next we'll move on to oral communications. Clerk.
Madam Chair, we do not have anyone signed up for oral communications.
Okay, that's fine then. We'll move on then to the consent agenda. This evening's consent agenda consists of 12 different items, 2 items under Clean Water Services, 7 items under Land Use and Transportation, 1 item under Health and Human Services, and 2 items under Support Services. What are the wishes of the Commission?
Move for approval, Madam Chair.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt tonight's consent agenda. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Scouten. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Next, we'll move on to presentations. We have 2 this evening. The first is a COVID-19 update from our Health and Human Services Director Extraordinaire, Marnie Kyle.
Good evening, Chair Harrington and Board. Thanks for having me again. So I have quite a bit to cover. I'll try to be efficient, but I'm happy to take any questions. So we can go ahead to the next slide. As usual, I'm going to start just quickly with the numbers. These were numbers as of yesterday. What I wanted to let you know is that today we had an additional 342 new or presumptive cases, and unfortunately statewide we had 14 new deaths, so that's some sad news. We have now topped 300 deaths statewide. So we can go to the next slide. So moving to our county, and again I've provided the last time that I presented, which was on the 14th, those numbers so that you have some comparison as to where we are. And these were numbers as of yesterday. So 2,496 total confirmed cases, 73 presumptive, 214 hospitalizations, 22 deaths within Washington County. And then you can see that we are still working on several outbreaks in long-term care facilities, other congregate settings, workplaces, and daycare camp settings.
Marnie, could I ask you a question, please?
Certainly.
If you could go back to that slide, the previous slide, the long-term care facilities, is it true that an outbreak is considered one case in that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the outbreak is defined now as one case, and that can be in a staff or a resident.
Thank you.
Okay. So this is just to give you an idea of the public health staff and how we're growing our surge staff. I still remember that magic number that we thought we had to meet, which was 90. And you can see that we are supporting 784 households in isolation and 565 additional people that are in quarantine. And so we have a total of 154 surge staff working on the COVID prevention and control. Staff are combination of HHS staff and contract staff, so OPHI and express professionals. And they're doing everything from case investigation and contact tracing to supporting the families in isolation and quarantine, and we have the outbreak strike teams. In addition to the staffing that you're seeing on this slide, we also have environmental health teams that are supporting local businesses, answering phone calls and questions every day, and also working to enforce the governor's orders.
Before you leave that slide, why don't you explain for the viewing public isolation and quarantine?
Sure. So isolation is when somebody is positive, they have a positive test, they're sick, and they are being told that they have to stay at home and stay away from any other people, including people in their household if others in their household aren't already infected. And quarantine is people that have been exposed to somebody that's positive, and we ask them to stay home for 2 weeks and to not go to work and to not be around any other people. So thank you for that question. Okay, so these are numbers that you're familiar with, and you learned from Dr. Kim Rep last week that these numbers can really fluctuate from week to week. Unfortunately, this week we are all in the red except for contact tracing. So the number of, the percent of tests are going up. The percent of cases is above the 30%, or excuse me, the 5% target. We're at 38% now. The percent of cases that are not linked to existing cases, and you'll remember that that's a measure of community spread. And I think Kim used I can't remember now that we really dog them, or but the contact tracers are really trained to try to connect new cases to previous known cases or to other outbreaks. So we work hard to figure out if there is connections. And then the hospitalizations is also unfortunately going up. Okay. And then the other measure that we've added, because we talked about the importance of this, is the healthcare system capacity. And one of the reasons, one of the ways that we measure that is by looking at our total ICU beds. And as you learned from Dr. Rep last week, we have a total of 103 ICU beds in Washington County, 98 adults and 5 pediatric. And right now we have 17 adult beds that are available, so that's a little bit higher than the number last week. So that's some good news. And just as a reminder that hospitals aren't postponing non-emergency procedures anymore. And so this level, the current level of ICU bed capacity is pretty standard for what you would see in a non-COVID era. And the slide, in case people are just listening and can't see the slides, 10 of those ICU beds are COVID-19 patients. I don't usually try to read the slides to you, but I'm not sure if some people are just listening and can't see. So I'll do a little bit more of that. So there's also been a lot of interest in our personal protective equipment supply system, and so I just wanted to briefly go over that with you. So the way that this works is the state receives personal protective equipment, or we purchase it through different contracts. And so we really separate it into 2 different request types. So one is medical. So those are like N95s and surgical masks, gowns, and gloves. And then there's non-medical, which is really disposable, or things like hand sanitizer or cloth face coverings. So they don't meet standards for use in a medical facility. And so the medical PPE is what I'm going to really concentrate on, but the medical PPE has to be medically certified by NIOSH or the FDA. And generally it's surgical masks or N95s that can be used for aerosolizing procedures, like when you do a COVID-19 test and you put a swab in somebody's mouth, or through their nose into their throat, and that tends to make people cough and spew. So that's an example of when you would want to use an N95 mask. The EOC over time adjusts policies and priorities for distribution. As a reminder, the Health Preparedness Organization in Region 1 provides the hospitals with their PPE, so that they provide the hospitals with masks, gowns, and gloves. So our medical distribution is to other medical facilities. And over time, the priorities around who we would distribute that to has changed based on routine supply chain, whether the supply chain was disrupted, slow, non-existent for a while in the very beginning. Right now, the routine supply chains have really opened up. And so most medical clinics, dental clinics, are homes that are providing home health care are not having an issue getting supplies. So when face covering became a requirement that was implemented, we did purchase a large number of face coverings, and those were distributed to migrant and seasonal farm workers. And then since then, it's been opened up to other general organizations. And so one of the things we've really appreciated, especially recently, is Clean Water Services has really helped us with the distribution of these, because what we're learning is we have this large supply, but some people that are qualified to get it don't necessarily know that we have it available. So businesses and some of the medical clinics really know, but some of the other businesses. So we appreciate the partnership with Clean Water Services to help us push that out to folks. So next slide, please. Just to give you an idea of inventory, this is the medical inventory, and you can see that we have right now over 20,000 N95 masks, 150,000, almost 151,000 procedural masks, and some face shields. And there is, especially Commissioner Rogers had asked this question a few weeks ago, there is some new data, novel COVID, there is some new data coming out that there's a little bit more concern about the plastic face shields. And so we are really encouraging people to use face coverings, so the disposable face coverings, masks. So there's nobody that's saying don't use the face shields, but there is more information coming out that's making us question the use of face shields alone. Always information changing. You can see in the other boxes gloves and gowns. So right now we have a good supply, and we just had today an additional 26 pallets that were delivered of these types of PPE to replenish this supply, and there's more available. So we can go to the next slide. So this is the non-medical, and here what I can point out, I'll just stick to a couple. This is the top chart is hand sanitizer, and I've heard some folks in our EOC say we could fill a swimming pool with hand sanitizer. So right now we have on hand 926 1-gallon containers of hand sanitizer to help refill the 8-ounce and the 16-ounce or different size bottles. And then we also have some half-gallon, and you can see 3,400, almost 3,500 8-ounce containers. And then the bottom one is our disposable KN95 and cloth face coverings, which we are also getting, my understanding was an addition of almost 200,000 more of the KN95s today, or they may have already been delivered. And then you can see that we continue to have over 10,000 cloth face coverings available.
I have a question. So we are purchasing this PPE through the CARES funding, is that correct?
So actually, the medical PPE that I reviewed, that's coming through the state, so we're not purchasing that. Some of the non-medical we have purchased, and some we have received from the state, so it's a little bit of both. There was an allocation that went through CARES funding that allows purchase of PPE, and I think the business recovery centers are really in charge of that, so I don't know where that is.
Yeah,
Yes.
Diane and I we're working on that today. We'll have a little bit more information tomorrow, and then I'll report back to our business group. And we are looking at getting some PPE into the BRCs. It'd be great this week, but soon it's going to come out of the ERCs. EOC is where our first initial one, if they can provide that, and we'll provide it.
Great, thank you.
So one last slide on PPE. Sorry, this was a lot, but it seems like a topic that folks were really interested in understanding a little bit more about. So again, the hospitals get their PPE through the Regional Coordination Center, the HPO, or the Health Preparedness Organization. We are not finding that it's difficult, that anyone's having difficulty obtaining the PPE, and the state is just beginning to push supplies out to childcare providers, long-term care facilities, other critical infrastructure providers, the ports like the Hillsborough Airport. And then we also are getting a large shipment of infrared no-touch thermometers that we've offered to businesses, and several of the cities have asked for a supply of those. And then they also are looking at federal distribution of masks and other PPE for the schools. So just wanted to give you an idea. All right, we're going to move to a new topic. So Ready Schools, Safe Learners. So OHA and the governor's office are finalizing school reopening guidance. So each operational blueprint for reentry, which is what they're calling the plans that the schools are required to submit, are due by August 17th or prior to the beginning of the school year. So these blueprints need to be reviewed for their local school board, as well as local public health authority and the Oregon Department of Education. And you can see that the blueprints have chapters, if you will, within their plan that the school districts have to address. So they have to talk about what their public health protocols are going to be, how their facilities and schools will operate safely, how they'll implement physical distancing, cleaning protocols, what will their response to outbreaks be, in addition to what schools do well, which is teach, the instruction piece of it, the social, emotional, mental health of the students and the faculty. They have to have a plan for community engagement, and they have to have a plan to keep their staff and personnel safe. So it's a pretty big lift. Every school, under the direction of the district, determines whether they're going to teach their students on site, whether they're going to use comprehensive distance learning or a hybrid model. So breaking news, the next slide.
If I
So-
may, Madam Chair, you have a question from Commissioner Scouten.
Yeah, thank you. Marnie, I don't know if you talked about testing supplies. What's the situation with test supplies? And maybe I missed it, and if so, my apologies.
So we are noting we have noticed a slowdown in testing results. So it can take 7 to 10 days now, and some of that is related to some of the supplies, especially at the lab level. And we're noticing that especially with the large national labs. It really, honestly, what I hear from different people and staff is it's the bigger labs, the private labs. So Virginia Garcia's turnaround is still pretty quick in some of our testing clinics. I hear from some people that they got and this could be in the same cohort where one person got their results in 24 hours and another person it took 7 days. So that is something that definitely is hampering our ability to isolate and quarantine in a really timely manner based on test results. So right now we just have to let people know that they may have been exposed and make recommendations about the timing of getting testing. And but for some people, if they're waiting for 7 to 10 days just for results, can be really difficult, especially if they're not getting paid to stay home for those 7 to 10 or 12 days. So this is late breaking news, and thanks to Chuck and Michael and Kevin for switching up the PowerPoint at the last minute. But as you know, the governor did have a press conference at 1:30 and did announce what the metrics are going to be for opening in-person classroom instruction. And what I can tell you is we're still trying to absorb this. We're trying to understand it. And there's probably public health, and our epidemiologists and our support staff have as many questions as answers. So I just wanted to share with you that the metrics are here. And so one is the metric must be met 3 weeks in a row. And there's really two local metrics. One is case rate that has to be equal to or less than 10 cases per 100,000 in 7 days. So, and then that has to happen 3 weeks in a row. And then the second metric, which we know that we're not meeting, is that the test positivity needs to be 5% or less in the past 7 days. So an average over 7 days, again, for 3 weeks in a row. And then there's the statewide positivity rate, which is also, we know, is not being met right now, which is the same. So even if the way that these read now, even if Washington County met the first two, but the statewide positivity rate, the way that the metrics read right now, we would not be able to open our schools to in-person. Some of the questions we have is around the methodology of how they're going to count the math, how they're going to come up with this case rate, and is it cumulative or is it an average? And then the other question is, because schools were really planning to start September 1, so they talk a lot about the preceding three weeks. So is preceding from September back 3 weeks, or does it count now? And we can plan. What I would say is this is probably not helpful news for our school leadership, and it's probably not helpful news for parents, because right now, today, this moment, there's a lot of questions. And so the public health staff are scrambling to understand this so that we can help provide support to our school leadership and to our parents and families.
So Marnie, are those, is that case rate and test positivity, is that by county, or are we considered the three counties?
Right now, it's by county.
Individual
Yes.
counties?
Now, it does talk, there's a lot of nuance in here, in 5 pages. It's surprising how much nuance can be in 5 pages. But if a school borders and they have kids that come from more than one county, both counties or multiple counties would need to meet that. So I'm not sure if that applies to like some like Gaston, Banks, potentially, or some of the, like Sherwood, some of the schools that are right on the border, if they draw kids. And honestly, I probably should know more about the school districts, but I don't know
That's fine.
if
And
that
Tiger
falls.
Tualatin School District is the one in Washington County that borders or covers portions of 2 counties. So that's the one school district that for sure has.
Would have Clackamas.
I was thinking Sherwood for sure, and I was thinking maybe Banks, Gaston.
Not Banks, but Gaston.
Yeah,
does.
Gaston,
Gaston
sorry.
is
Oh, yeah, Mill.
physically in, Mill
Yeah.
County, part of it, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep, it's complicated.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is very complicated. And, I mean, I think it's good news in that there's metrics that reflect prevalence within the community that's helpful and it's measurable, but it's difficult news because there's not a date certain, and so it makes it really difficult to plan. And school districts there's different criteria planning that they have to do towards meeting this, kind of like when we were moving from baseline to phase 1. And we had to plan for phase 1, but we didn't know when the metrics would say we were there. So they're in that situation now. And if the metrics, if they open to in-person and the metrics are, worsening, there's certain cutoffs where they have to develop a plan for moving backwards. And so there's 3 different levels, sort of like our plan, that they'll have to have a plan for going back and forth more, because it's very clear if you meet 30 cases per 100,000 that you have to go backwards. So it's already set.
Does this apply to private schools as well as public
Yes.
schools?
Yes.
On the prior chart where there were items in blue, those don't apply to the private schools. And the document outlines that.
Yeah, they have a little bit of different, they do have to do the public health protocols and
do the
response and
white-
facilities, but their
1, 2, 3.
community engagement is a little bit different in their instructional methodologies.
But the parameters do apply.
Yes,
Metrics,
page.
yeah, the
yes,
community
the
metrics.
metrics, yes.
Thank you.
Now, so the part that I just want to make sure for today that I walk away with the correct understanding. So these apply to each county, just as it had in the July 22nd version. Yet at the same time, businesses, they're reopening now in order to go for those businesses impacted by the difference between phase 1 and phase 2. There, we are still linked with the other 2
Yes.
counties.
Yes.
Okay.
And my understanding is this is only county by county unless the school district,
Borders. Includes multiple.
right, if their students come from more than one county. Yes.
I have a couple of questions too. I appreciate to Commissioner Teresa's questions. I think you answered part of it. One had to do with what's the definition of a school? Because you kept saying district, but that's public. We have private schools,
Right.
charter schools. There's all kinds of different
Yes.
schools. And you're saying that other than a little nuance on this,
Yes.
they're all subjected, unless they're a charter school that's online, they don't have a public facility anyway, so they're not impacted at all.
Right.
Parents who are sending, and that's a broad term, to a charter school that is not with a facility, which the largest charter school in the state doesn't have any buildings. I mean, it's just simply online.
Yeah.
But the last metric on the next page, how does that apply if they're all aggregated? If I'm in Burns, Oregon, or if I'm in Lakeview, Oregon, am I still going to have to comply with that? If I have no, you said county by county in the first two.
Yes.
The last one, let's say we have lots of problems in the metro area, but they have none. Are they still going to be held to the same standard on the statewide? Or
Yeah.
do you know yet?
So I don't, that's one of our questions is if Washington County clearly met the first two, but the statewide test positivity is still above 5%, would our schools not be allowed to have in-person or hybrid model? And the way it reads, the 5-page document, the way it reads to me tonight is that we would not be allowed because you have to, there's a statewide metric that has to be met. But then there's also exceptions for rural schools, and there's exceptions for schools that have fewer than 100 students, and there's exceptions for K through 3rd grade as well. So there's other nuance within that I think the request was that next week we would really take a deep dive into the school requirements. And to be really honest, even though it's only 5 pages that I've read like 6 times, it's still a lot of nuance to absorb and a lot of questions. And so I know Trish already had a call with OHA about this, and there was other staff that were on an EPI call, and then there was our school strike teams who were listening to a 3rd call. So we're just trying to absorb it. It came out at 1:30 today, but I wanted you to at least see the high-level county metrics that applies to, you're right, it's really it's private schools, charter schools, if they have in-person classroom or a hybrid model.
Yes.
Everybody, yes,
All in the
private,
document. Yep.
private, charter, public schools.
When you come back, and I don't expect it, I mean, that's too soon. When it says these rates, I presume that's general population rates and not student rates. So
It's,
we
yes,
have no student infected, but
correct,
statewide average was 5%.
correct.
They'd have a problem. They couldn't open. And I suspect those eastern counties are going to not be very happy with this.
But there are some exceptions that I didn't put on this because it really probably wouldn't apply to us other than maybe some of our more rural schools, but I don't think even Gaston, I don't know, they might have a school under 100. One of their elementary,
I
yeah.
have no idea what
yeah.
the number of school kids that
Yeah.
go to that school
Yeah.
are, so I could certainly find that out.
But we can dig into that next week, because there are other exceptions, but I really kind of gave you the broadest stroke of what will apply to most of our both public and private schools.
I'll tell you that Westland School District is in Washington County, part of it, and Scappoose School District is in Washington County, part of it. These boundaries pre-existed,
Right,
county boundaries.
Yeah.
state boundaries.
yeah.
So I just want to also add to this that the governor's office has plans to fan out through all of our standing committees already, such as through the Joint Regional Solutions GPI meeting that's on Thursdays. It's on the agenda for August 11th there. It'll be in the Friday AOC calls that we all have availability to us. It's everywhere. We're going to be going through all kinds of detail on this for a good 2-3 weeks, just as we went through all the business stuff multiple times from the end of April, or really the middle of April, all the way through early June.
Marnie, can you remind me what the statewide test positivity rate is right now?
It is, no, I don't remember. It's under 6%, but it's over
above
5%. Yes.
Okay.
I want to say like 5.3%, but
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty similar, yeah. Okay, next slide. Okay, so public health's role, just to let you know, we have, some of this is old news. We were engaging with OHA and making recommendations about the metrics, and the public health officers and the public health epidemiologists really wanted to have a metric based on rate, case rate, because that's makes a lot of sense around community spread. And then we are having weekly technical assistance calls with superintendents, school staff, school nurses. We are reviewing the school blueprints for private schools as well as the public schools. We review the communicable disease section. We don't pretend to understand the teaching piece of it. And then we are also assisting with plans to develop disease investigation and contact tracing. And so that's the work we're doing with schools. In addition, we are already working on hiring staff to create the school outbreak strike teams, because we know they don't have enough school nurses, and so we're going to have to support that. So the next slide we can really skip, because this was just to let you know the kinds of policy discussions we're having, and it's done now. Well, it's never done, but you have the breaking news. So now switching to another topic, the homeless strategy update. So I just wanted to give you a quick update. The respite center at Comfort Inn and Suites is still operating. We've served 78 people since it's opened. It has been underutilized when you think about the number of rooms, but for the people that it has served, it has been really, really life-saving. And so it's been really important. So we're looking at that. And we do have an agreement with Clackamas County, and they have put a couple of people from Clackamas County. So the Family Promise shelters, Tualatin Valley and Family Promise of Beaverton, they're at full staff. They're currently sheltering 11 households, and they have several other intakes scheduled for this week. Family Promise of Washington County is reorganizing due to their director resigning at the beginning of July. So right now, we're on hold with that shelter. Wanted to share a story with you. Family Promise of Tualatin Valley was sheltering a 70-year-old woman with serious physical disability that caused her to lose her housing. She lives on $962 of Social Security income and was living in her car for more than a year. She was malnourished and couldn't remember the last time she was able to cook food. She was thrilled to have a private shower for the first time in so long and has now been approved for housing with Washington County Kaiser Metro 300 program, which is the regional Kaiser Permanente program. So even though it may not sound like a lot of people, it's making a huge difference for people's lives. The Safe Place Shelter, you heard a lot about that last week. We are moving forward with that, and it is on target to open on August 4th. So we've been doing the outreach at the organized campsites, and my understanding is fences went up today. Facilities, thank you very much. I don't know if Martin's still here, but he and his staff have been helping to get the platforms all set up for the physically distanced tent. We will have hand washing, mental health services, syringe exchange, lots of services. And then the hotel vouchers are also open and operating. We have a woman there now who's been cycling in and out of the hospital and homelessness because she had a leg amputated, and she has been in and out. We got her into one of the hotels, and now she also has been recently housed using the Built for Zero initiative, so really connecting those dots. So it's really exciting to see. So we're preventing COVID, and we're helping people move into permanent supportive housing. And with that, I will end with my normal messages to please really all of the public to really think about interactions in group, especially social groups. The executive order is no social groups over 10 people. It's really important. The reason that we have that is because that's where we are seeing new cases. Remembering to keep the 6 feet of social distancing, and to please, please, please wear your face covering and wash your hands. And I know I went probably over tonight, but thank you so much for your time, and I'll answer any other questions.
Real quick, Marnie, there's 564 students in Gaston K through 12.
Okay, so they don't count for the 100 students, but maybe for rural.
Commissioner Scout, do you have any questions for Marnie?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thanks for hanging in there with us. Commissioner
Of course.
Treese?
No, I just want to say thank you for your work, and I appreciate the quick turnaround on the information today about schools, and I look forward to hearing more.
Thanks for all your support, all of you.
Fine as well, thanks.
I just want to say thank you for continuing to highlight all the key portions. And I just want to pass on that reviewing the Ready Schools Safe Learners guide, they've done a good job of making it very approachable. I don't speak education lingo, and I was able to follow what the goals were, why the strategies were relevant, and so forth. So
Yeah,
I guess-
no easier to implement though for
Yeah.
our school colleagues.
I know, it sounds like the 5-pager has a lot of if-then-else clauses too. I don't look forward to that. So thank you, and keep up
Thank
the
you.
great work.
Thanks.
All right, now we'll go to the second presentation from the county auditor. And we have John Hutzler, our elected county auditor, as well as Kristen Adams Swanberg, the principal management auditor on Mr. Hutzler's team. And
Can you hear me?
yes, we can.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Chair Harrington and members of the board. For the record, my name is John Hutzler. I'm your elected county auditor. I'm here virtually today with my colleague, Principal Management Auditor Christine Adams Swanberg, to present the first in a series of planned audits of Washington County's implementation of the Metro Affordable Housing Bond Program. Christine led the audit team on this audit. Before turning the presentation of our report over to her, I'd like to provide a brief background on the bond program and our long-range plans for auditing the implementation of that program here in Washington County. Next slide, please. As you know, in November 2018, voters authorized the Metro Regional Government to issue more than $650 million in bonds to support affordable housing throughout the region. Washington County will receive about $116 million to construct at least 814 affordable housing units over the next 5 to 7 years. The county developed a local implementation strategy, the LIS, which was approved by Metro in December 2019 and issued a notice of funding availability, the NOFA, in March 2020. The NOFA offered $80 million of the $116 million and invited project proposals from housing developers. Proposals were submitted in May, reviewed by staff in June, and submitted to a committee that is currently scoring these proposals according to criteria set forth in the NOFA. That committee is expected to report results to your board in August. You will choose which projects Washington County will submit to Metro with requests for funding, and Metro is expected to act on the county's requests in September, with construction to follow over the next several years. Next slide, please.
John, can I ask you a question real quick?
Sure, but I can barely hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. My question is, why the difference between the 116 and the 80? What is that difference?
Well, I think the housing department simply decided to first issue 80 million and reserve the balance to see what projects were proposed here and what how they might need to change the next announcement in order to meet the targets that they're setting. So rather than issuing it for everything at once, I think they're just phasing it. But I'm sure Comey can answer that question better than I. Ultimately, I'm sure the full 116 million will go out.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you, John. I appreciate it.
Sure. So the county charter requires that the auditor issue an annual report to the board and the public describing the activities of the auditor in the preceding year and a plan for the upcoming year. As a result, our audit planning typically encompasses a single year. However, this affordable housing bond involves a multi-year, multi-phased program and a substantial investment of public dollars. As such, it warrants longer range audit planning and a substantial investment of audit resources. My office has developed a tentative plan for a series of audits over the next 8 years, designed to address various phases of the program. Our first report, which we'll summarize shortly, examined a critical element of the project selection process. Our second audit, which kicked off last week, will examine whether the program's governance and management systems reflect best practices designed to ensure program success. As proposed projects are funded and get underway, we anticipate evaluating project management systems. Over the years when construction of new units occurs, we will likely schedule construction audits of selected projects. And as the program draws to a close, we will assess whether it has achieved its established goals. Next slide, please. Auditors are sometimes unfairly characterized as the people who come in after the battle is lost to bayonet the wounded. With this series of audits, we hope to dispel this myth. Our goal as auditors is not to assign blame for project failures or shortcomings, but to provide real-time audit assurance to your board and the public that the Affordable Bond Program is on the right track to achieve its goals, and to offer timely and actionable recommendations for course adjustments, tools that can improve the prospects for program and project success. Next slide, please. For example, in this first audit of the series, we provided a rough draft of our findings and recommendations to the Housing Department and County Administration in time for staff and the scoring committee to consider them in their evaluation of proposals. And we're presenting our final report together with the county administrator's response for your consideration before you are asked to submit proposals to Metro with your requests for funding. We hope to continue to provide findings and recommendations in time to impact the successful implementation of each phase of this affordable housing initiative. And with that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Christine, who will brief you on the substance of our first report in this series.
All right. Thanks, John. Madam Chair and Commissioners, my name is Christine Swanberg, and I'm the Principal Management Auditor in the County Auditor's Office and the team lead for this recently released first report on the county's implementation of the Metro Affordable Housing Bond Program. Next slide, please. Our objective in this first audit was to assess whether the notice of funding availability as written was likely to generate proposals that would be funded. Metro has stated that in order to be approved for funding, projects must be consistent with the county's local implementation strategy. So we compared the NOFA to the LIS. Next slide, please. Both the LIS and the NOFA identified desired characteristics of affordable housing projects. And although they describe these characteristics in different terms, we found that they generally fall into one of three categories, and those are listed in decreasing order of importance. So for example, requirements or conditions that a proposal must meet in order for it to be considered. Criteria are attributes that a project used to evaluate proposals one against another. And preferences represent additional considerations that could influence whether a proposal is included in the portfolio of projects submitted for funding. To generate proposals that would be consistent with the LIS, the NOFA should place at least as much emphasis on those desired characteristics as the LIS does. Next slide, please. So we identified 15 desirable project and portfolio characteristics described in the LIS and found that all but one received equal or greater emphasis in the NOFA. So take item 1, for example. To be considered for funding, both the LIS and the NOFA specify that a developer must strive to subcontract 20% of the work to minority, women-owned, and emerging small business firms. Or item 11, in what looks like this very small image up there, where there is an express preference in the LIS for projects to be located in high opportunity areas with access to public transportation and parks, schools, and jobs, and that became a project requirement in the NOFA. To the extent that the NOFA places at least as much emphasis on these desired characteristics as the LIS, we judged that it was likely to result in proposals that would be considered consistent with the LIS. So only one element actually failed to meet this standard. In the LIS, the county indicated it would prioritize projects sponsored by culturally specific organizations or in which such organizations have a meaningful role in project design and operations. And we judged this to express a preference for such projects. The NOFA, however, makes no mention of a role for culturally specific organizations. Next slide, please. We found that the NOFA was generally well designed. However, the one LIS priority, the significant involvement for culturally specific organizations, was not expressed in the NOFA. If proposals submitted in response to the NOFA don't adequately address this priority, funding could be delayed while the county negotiates with developers to include a significant role for those culturally specific organizations in their project proposals. Next slide. So we made 2 recommendations in our audit report to improve the likelihood that the projects proposed in response to this and in future NOFAs would be eligible for funding. The first is that the county should move expeditiously to negotiate a significant role for culturally specific organizations into any proposal that really doesn't include such a role, before those proposals are submitted to Metro for funding. And second, that the Housing Department should express more clearly in any NOFA issued for the balance of the bond funding that the county's preference really for the project sponsored by culturally specific organizations or in which such organizations have a significant role in the project design and operations. Next slide, please. The county administrator agreed with our findings, and the housing director will present management's plans for implementation. And I do want to say we very much appreciate the assistance that we received from Shannon Wilson and Comey Calvar from the Housing Department, who are here in the audience, as well as Ruth Asuna from the County Administrator's Office, who is also here. And we really look forward to them working on our series of audits for the county's implementation of the Affordable Housing Bond Program. We do appreciate their assistance. And back to John.
Thank you, Christine. I look forward to presenting the results of our planned audits of the Affordable Housing Bond Program over the next several years. Christine and I would be happy to address any questions you may have regarding this report after management presents its response.
Yes, and now we'll welcome Comey Calvar, our Director for Housing Services here in Washington County, to give us the management report. Welcome, Comey.
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Comey Calvar. I'm the Housing Director. We do agree with the recommendation from the audit. However, that finding is mitigated by several factors. The first one is Washington County has a set aside for Washington County-based nonprofits, which is unique because none of the other jurisdictions did that. And a lot of the community-based nonprofits, many of them are culturally specific. The set aside is $25 million out of the $116 million. There's also a Metro staff on the evaluation committee. So that Metro staff, I think one of the findings is the lack of emphasis for culturally specific organizations could lead to delay in funding proposals by Metro. There is a Metro staff on our committee, so they are reviewing these real time, asking questions, being involved. We also have 10 points in the NOFA for racial equity, which all the applicants have to address. So that's 10 points. So that also mitigates the finding. We do look forward to working with the auditor's office. We work very well, the housing department as well as the county administration. And we don't think this finding would materially impact the outcomes in terms of culturally specific organizations being involved in the development of housing. So with that.
If I might ask a question that's not part of the audit, but how many projects are either underway or are you currently engaged with so far?
So there is the one in Tiger, that was the phase 1 project that is under construction. That's and then there is 7 applicants that are being reviewed. I don't want to prejudge what the evaluation committee is doing,
but get into the details.
We have 7 applicants requesting $70 million total out of the 80 we put forward, and that includes community-based nonprofits.
Great.
Okay,
Other
and then
Commissioner questions?
Yeah, so they've requested $70 million. What's the total value of the projects?
the total value of
All the projects are requesting $70 million, but that's not 100% value of the projects, aren't they?
no. The total development cost, I don't think I have that with me.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
It's okay, it's outside of the scope of the audit. I probably shouldn't have opened those floodgates, but.
Well, let me ask you a more pertinent question to the audit then, and I think that's a fair, and then Comey, you can communicate back to us on the other. So if I understand you correctly, our LIS has a higher precedence than NOFA, because NOFA doesn't require the community part that you referred to in their.
That's the spread.
in their Q&A, so, or in their evaluation. I'm trying to go back to it now.
Yeah,
I'm
with
sorry.
the CHODOs, you mean, with the 25 million set aside?
No, with the LIS desired characteristics as compared to NOFA. And we get down to the cultural specific organization, so NOFA doesn't require that, our LIS does, so the LIS takes precedence. Is that how I understand that?
No, I think
So
that's
the
your point.
developer would have to
Right.
comply with the cultural specific organization's requirement, and so our LIS has a higher authority than NOFA.
I would agree with that, yes.
Okay.
We have, like I mentioned, we have 10 points for inclusion and racial equity, which we would be evaluating all the applicants on, which covers the issue to a large extent, yeah.
All right, so of the 7 applicants, the 70 million, the 25 million set aside that we have specifically, so we're good with that too. In other words, these applicants could fall underneath that 25 million, so
Right.
we're good with that.
There's applications from community-based housing organizations, BNSTAR, well,
Great.
Call me the question.
and CEPA, yeah.
Question I had, and you explained the spread now, that roughly $36 million, and I understand it's the other nonprofit organizations we typically work with. But I didn't catch when those applications would come in and those funds might be released. I understand the other 70 million that Commissioner Willie was talking about and that you're now reviewing, but set aside funds for the nonprofits who are in this business, who have culturally specific goals, many of them.
Yes,
When are they going to submit applications, and when would those funds be applied for?
they already did. They were part of the 7, yes.
That's part of the 7. I didn't.
Yes, part of the 7 applicants, yours.
Yeah, that's what I was wanting to make sure we had overlap and we didn't have 25 million sitting out here all by itself and nobody was applying.
Well, then I'm still confused on the 36 million. Where's that going
this-
to come in?
So there's 80 million total put forward,
Right?
25 for community-based housing organizations, 55 for the general. So we got applications that covers those bases.
That's the 80 million, but how about the difference between the 80 and the 116?
The auditor's response to your question is accurate. We didn't want to have everything out because we want to make sure we are tracking on our goals with Metro. For instance, we have a goal to have 100 permanent supportive housing units. We also have goals on bedrooms, 2, 3 bedrooms units, family-size units. So his response was accurate.
Commissioner Treese, anything? Okay, looks like we've taken care of all questions. So I wanted to say to our auditor team, particularly for Christine Adams-Swanberg, thank you for a very clear and concise presentation on the audit particulars as well. I did read the document as well, so thank you to the auditor team. And we, as a result of all the different processes that are in place, I believe that our public can be very well assured that their investment of public dollars is not only proceeding apace in order to address the affordable housing needs of our community, but it is also being done so in a way that stewards the public trust. So thank you to all involved.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Komi.
All righty. Next, we're going to move on to our public hearings and to our action items. The first one this evening is on, well, our first two will be dealing with Washington County Charter items. Both of these are resolutions and orders, so we don't need to do the ordinance read by title only business like we do with ordinances, and especially land use ordinances. So first, I want to see, we have a staff report on these topics. Okay, so the first item is item 4A. Before we go into it, we'll be getting a staff presentation from our county counsel, Alan Rapplier, and this is on the county charter, chapter 3, that he'll go into, but just for brevity, this is the one that's dealing with the salaries. So take it away, Mr. Rapplier.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. So again, you've been working on these proposed charter changes, and you rearranged the schedule. So we're going to have the first one, which is proposes to amend the charter on the salary, and then directs it to be placed on the ballot, and then immediately following, it was the action item to approve the ballot title and explanatory statement, and then we'll do the same with the second one. So the first one, as you mentioned, is amending Section 30, and it changes how the Board of Commissioners is compensated. And that change is a fairly simple change. In Section 30E, the existing language is the salary of the chair shall be 80% of the salary of the circuit court judge, and the salary for the commissioners shall be 40% of the salary of the chair. The change proposes that the board shall appoint a 5-member salary commission composed of qualified human resource professionals with compensation experience, and by January 1 of each odd year, the salary commission shall set the salaries for the chair and the board of county commissioners and document the basis of their decision. All elected or appointed Washington County officials are prohibited from serving on the Salary Commission. So that's the change, and it said it's very straightforward. As you recall, we first introduced this charter amendment on January 7th, and following the charter provisions, we're having the public hearing at this point. And since that time, we received a letter from the Committee on Community Involvement June 22nd, supporting the proposed change. We also received a letter from Metro Councilor Juan Carlos Gonzalez on July 22nd, supporting it, and also Nathan Teskey, Executive Director of the Bienestar. He also supported this proposed change. So,
in addition, I would like to add that we have 4 additional letters that have come in this evening.
Oh, good. All right.
Yes.
Thank you. I was unaware of that. And so at this point, I'm open to any questions, and if there is none, then we can open the public hearing.
So first, we'll start with Commissioner questions.
Well, I
Commissioner
just wanted to
Trees?
point out that I believe our council said January 7th, and
Yeah.
I think he meant July 7th.
July 7th, I'm sorry.
I just
got
wanted
corrected.
to,
Thank
for
you.
the record, I wanted to correct that.
Great, thank you. Though we did talk about these things last summer when we had a work session on various charter items, and at that time, we chose to just deal with the most urgent and recognize that there are other changes that could be made, but it would be more natural to follow those after our update to the strategic vision and strategic plan. That's going to be a whole nother big project. Anyway, just a little context there.
The question that I have, and it's no secret, I've opposed this in the past, and we'll vote no again tonight, is I don't know how it applies to sitting commissioners or those of us who are coming into office. It's not been very clear. I know there's a proposal, but I have no idea what that means to those of us who weren't elected under that system. So I'm still very confused about that.
Commissioner Rogers, as the charter amendment proposes, that the salary commission would start on the January 1 of each odd year. So this coming January 2021, the commission would be effective, and then they could propose the salary change, and that would affect the sitting commissioners.
So it would affect the sitting commissioners, and they
As of January 1.
and they would also be proposing. They could propose anything, hours.
They could, this is, they could propose less salary. They could, the salary commission will have to evaluate the job, the duties, the responsibilities, and then they would make a proposal to the board.
Just to be clear, in my own mind, they're not restricted to this salary question. They have a much broader charge that they'll be able to do.
So it says that they will, document the basis of the decisions, and they are qualified human resource professionals with compensation experience. And one of the proposals we could do is the charter is the very broad policy document, and the board can always adopt an ordinance that puts more meat on the bones on what they are directed to do, what they're specifically to look at. And
So they, in fact, could propose a transition period for individuals who had been elected under one set of circumstances with the charter when they took office.
That's correct.
So they could in fact recommend, like I said, a transition period.
Yes, they could.
Can I follow up? Commissioner Treese is bringing up a good point, and that's one of the ones that I've been railing on a bit, is that they also don't have to do that. I mean, they could propose anything they want.
They could.
Yeah, all right. So it's much broader.
And just so, you know, this is modeled after the state of Oregon statute for non-charter counties. So that's how non-charter counties set their salaries for their commissioners.
I have a question. So the salary commission, as stated, and similar to how Clackamas County and Multnomah County's charter work in enabling a salary commission, the salary commission makes a recommendation to the board, or is their action final?
Their action, would be final. They would be the final arbiter.
Yeah. And then it would be effective with the budget season.
That's correct.
Yep. Okay, any other questions for county council?
Yeah, just follow, I'm trying to get this out. So their recommendation would be final if they could describe any conditions they want, or would that be flushed out in ordinance? And
Well, you know, that.
beyond salary?
It says
Yes.
compensation.
No, it's under the compensation section of the charter.
But
Right. So
but
it's
you were saying they could do other things.
Well, they could, you know, set up what the compensation is. I mean, the compensation is a pretty broad term, so it is only limited to compensation, but they could, you know, like I said, I think that they wanted to do a gradated, you know, and this year we're going to do X amount, and the next year we'll do X amount for, you know, the amount of work that's going to be performed by the commissioners.
Could they define hours?
No, because commissioners are elected officials, and there is no hourly salary. They are, you know, paid for their elected position.
I think what's important to emphasize here is that it is a compensation-based approach, and this is something that is done in other counties. It's also done in the private sector all the time. And the point would be to bring in people who are professionals who understand this process to make the best recommendations for the county.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we're going to open a public hearing on the proposed amendment to the Washington County Charter, Chapter 3, Section 30. Is there anyone signed up to testify?
Yes, Madam Chair, we have Mercedes Garcia as the first person. So Mercedes, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
All right, please go ahead for up to 2 minutes.
Okay, my name is Mercedes Garcia. I'm a resident of Washington County, and I have a family here. I would like to speak in favor of the board's adoption of the proposed resolution on commissioner salaries. I think that setting up a special commission that is fully prepared and qualified to review the system and to make recommendations is going to really assist the county and the process to set up a system that will reflect today's needs. The needs of the county have been changing. I've been observing that over the years, and I think it's time for us to do that. I believe that that this commission would be able to set up a system that would open up the possibility of getting a broader group of people who may be interested in this and working in the leadership of the county. I think that maybe I would be hopeful that people who have not been able to apply because possibly the salaries are not going to be commensurate to their needs and their families' needs. And I'm hopeful that that would be looked at, and that we would be able to have a broader representation on the board to reflect the local community. So I'm hoping that this will pass and that we will be able to have the public have a say, and that the amendment will be placed on the ballot for the November 2020 general election. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. Thank you for joining us. Kevin?
Next, we have Bridget Koch.
Bridget, can you hear us? Bridget?
Bridget, you're muted. See, there you are.
Okay, there we are.
Yep, we can hear you now. Thank you, Bridget.
Oh, yes, and thank you all. Thank you, Chair Harrington and Commissioners Rogers, Scouten, Treese, and Willie. Very nice to join you this evening. As you know, I'm the Executive Director of Adelante Mujeres, and since 2002, we've been working to provide holistic education and empowerment opportunities to Latino women and their families, specifically to ensure full participation and active leadership in the community. We are committed to fostering leadership because in order for all communities to thrive, it is essential to build diverse communal and individual power for the common good. To support a diverse board of commissioners, we must make it possible for diverse individuals to consider running for office. You all know very well the sacrifices you have made to become an elected official. Fortunately, your family and financial circumstances have made that possible. For many Black, Indigenous, and people of color, such a choice is beyond their reach because of the financial implications. Many do not have another source of income, such as a business, and nor do they have the flexibility in their current workplace of working part-time while they serve their term of office. So I'm confident that the proposed amendment to the Washington County Charter will result in a broader, more representative pool of candidates. And I ask that you provide your support to this change, which will further equitable access to decision-making in our county. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Cook. Kevin, who's next?
Madam Chair, that concludes the testimony on this item.
All right. Is there anyone else in the room who wishes to testify? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. What are the wishes of the commission?
Move for approval.
We have a motion.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move forward with the resolution and order adopting the amendment and placing the amendment on the ballot for the November 2020 general election. I forgot to mention at the start of this business meeting, something that I talked about at the work session meeting, and that is if any commissioners wish to make comments on the action before the vote, that once we have a motion and a resolution on the table, that is the time for commissioners to make any comments. So, Commissioner Scouten, are there any comments you would like to make before the vote?
Thank you, Chair Harrington. I would just simply note the comments and letters of support that have come in for this charter change, and I agree with the sentiments expressed in those letters. I would add to that as a practical matter, as our county has really grown a great deal in the 20 years I've been on the board, and of course in the years before that, we're now at 600 and some thousand people. We've by far the largest, second largest county in the state, with a lot of responsibilities, and we have really necessarily had to up our game in our presence in Salem and legislature at the metro level, really substantially increase our government relations staffing. And I think that requires more presence and more energy also from and more time from our board than was always possible under the present system. And we're just simply too large not to be more present and to have our commissioners more visible in Salem, in Portland, and really just across the region. So it's for those reasons that I would support this charter change, anticipating that the salaries will be something more commensurate to the salaries that are paid by paid county commissioners and some of our other peer counties.
Other commissioners? Commissioner Treese?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. And I would like to echo Commissioner Scouten's comments. And I'd also like to state that I appreciate the work that staff has done on this, and I appreciate the work that the council has done to make this come forward. And I'd also like to state that this is an issue that isn't for today, it's not for tomorrow, it's for the future of Washington County. It's for the future of our communities of color. It's also for the future growth and the children that are living here now, that they have the type of representation that they deserve to have. So thank you very much.
Any other commissioners?
Sure, I'll make my comment. I'm voting no, obviously. I've said that before. I won't belabor it. I can count. There's a 4-to-1 vote tonight, but I disagree with the philosophy that somehow you can buy representation if you pay enough. I think that people will serve if they feel that that's their calling. I also am disheartened that we didn't define better what the Salary Commission would do. We normally have had in the past, as Commissioner Scott will well recognize during his period, we've always had a charter review committee. I've talked to 2 people who were on the CCI who voted on that particular measure. They didn't have the kind of discussion that I would have thought they might have had. So I oppose it. If we had done some more homework and come to some conclusion in terms of what all this means and define it, and I appreciate particularly Commissioner Treese's comments about this is for the future and that there's some kind of bridging that's going to go on, but that's certainly not what this does. So I'll leave it at that and vote no.
Commissioner Willie? He's good? Okay. So this is Catherine Harrington, Chair. I'll make some comments. As I mentioned earlier, last year, I believe it was this summer, we had a work session conversation about potential charter changes. And we had a good discussion that recognized that this board has a lot on its workplace and is challenged to do the work for a county with a population of over 610 people, also with a unique portfolio of the circumstances of about a third of our population living in urban unincorporated areas, which involves multiple special districts for their needs. And on top of that, we're the Board for Clean Water Services. This county's also been functioning under a strategic plan that is, about 40 years old. And it's high time for us to engage with our 21st century community. Out of that engagement, we realized that there's likely to be other changes that may be appropriate to serve our community here in the 21st century. But we recognize, and we do need to go through that. It'll be a multi-year program and will be one of the big projects that our new CAO will be taking on to propose a work plan before the board. In the meantime, we are challenged to do the work of the current county. And I'm currently the only full-time board member according to the salary level. And I respect my 4 colleagues. They work as hard as they can while at the same time coping with the fact that their compensation is really that at a part-time level. And so it necessitates personal choices or additional employment. As Commissioner Treese mentioned, this is an issue for betterment in our future. And as the 6 different pieces of written testimony, as well as the 2 verbal testimonies have highlighted here, by virtue of the voters having this choice before them, we hope to open up opportunities for more people to pursue running to serve their community in these elected positions. And I hope we will succeed in that. I think it's important that we have boards, decision makers, elected boards that are more thoroughly represent the composition of the community itself. We have had ample opportunity as commissioners, individual commissioners, to look at the salary review commission work of our sister counties in Clackamas County and Multnomah County. They have worked quite well. I know of no curveballs that those salary review commissions have provided to their boards. So I think we can go into this with a degree of hope that it will work quite well, particularly as this proposal specifies professionals to serve on this salary commission. So with that, I will be voting in support of this resolution and order. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
The motion carries 4-1. Next, we'll move on to the action item related to this, a resolution and order adopting a ballot title and explanatory statement for a proposed amendment to the Chapter 3, Section 30, Sub E of the Washington County Charter to come before the voters at the November 3rd, 2020 general election. Staff report, please.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board. So I worked with Commissioner Treese and Alex Vidal and Philip Bransford from your communications division here to draft the ballot title and the explanatory statement. So we have to be neutral and factual and not advocate for one position or the other, and I think we've accomplished that here. And so I'm able to answer any questions.
Are there any questions of County Council? No. Thank you, Mr. Rapplier, Mr. Vidal, and Mr. Bramsford. Appreciate your work. What are the wishes of the commission on this resolution and order?
Motion to approve requested action.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Are there any commissioner comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
The motion carries by a vote of 4-1. All right, we'll move on to the second public hearing of the evening. This is on the land use portion of the county charter. Staff report from Mr. Rapplier, please.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board. So this is the second amendment to the county charter that was discussed earlier in the year, and that was presented to the board in early July. And so pursuant to the charter, we're having the public hearing today on this. And this is an amendment that only strikes language from the charter, does not replace or amend any language. And that language is the provision of the Chapter 10 Land Use Ordinances, Section 103, the whole section is being stricken. And that is a sort of an anachronistic provision that that limited the hearings of land use ordinances after November and before March. So 4 months a year, we couldn't hear land use ordinances. And that has created the difficulties over the last years. And so it's been proposed to strike that language, and so we would be able to hear land use ordinances year-round. And we had a letter from the Committee for Community Involvement that supported that. And then also July 9th, the Planning Commission Chair, Jeff Petrillo, also sent a letter supporting it. And the Planning Commission has been after this, I believe, since 2014, interested in having this restriction pulled away. And we are, as has been mentioned, we are a large county, and we need to be able to respond to changes to our land use system in a timely fashion.
Thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Rapplier? Seeing none, I'm going to open a public hearing on the proposed amendment to the Washington County Charter, Chapter 10.
Madam Chair, we do not have anyone signed up to testify on this item.
Is there anyone in the room that wishes to testify on this matter? Seeing none, we're going to close the public hearing. What are the wishes of the commission?
Move for adoption, Madam Chair.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve the resolution and an order to adopt the amendment and place the amendment on the ballot for November 2020 general election. Are there any comments from commission members before the vote?
Yes, Madam Chair. For those who are watching who may want to vote there in November, this is a very archaic section of our ordinances. It doesn't work effectively. I call it administrative. It's hard to operate under that particular provision when the pace of work is with us. So I would heartily encourage you to support this particular amendment to the charter.
I'd just like to add that, this is Commissioner Treese, I'd like to add that for me, it was a way of looking at customer service and how do we address the needs of our constituents in Washington County. So it was very important to me. And once again, I'd like to thank General Counsel. I'd like to thank Alex Vidal for the work on this as well. So thank you.
Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner
Yeah,
Scout?
the only comment I'd make, I simply would repeat what the first two commissioners, Rogers and Treese, have said. I would just recount a particular moment, maybe moments of time some years ago. This section really needed to be changed really some years ago. We struggled as a board and with staff and with the community to hammer out all of the code changes and amendments and land use decisions that had to be made when we went forward with the development of North Bethany and putting together the plans for North Bethany. And we had a couple of Octobers where we were just trying to squeeze important work in the last couple of Tuesdays of October to beat the November deadline. And then we were not always successful, and we ended up having to kind of try to do a workaround through the winter months, which was always successful, and then try to pick up the pieces again in March. And it's just one example of when you have some really complex land use work. It's a problem if it's something that's going to take some months to finish, and you're up against an October deadline. Then you have to wait months before you can pick it up again. And it's just not workable. It's just not good governance.
Thank you, Commissioner Scout. And any other commissioner comments? Okay, I would just like to comment, Commissioner Treese put it well. This is customer service related. It also enables us as an agency with limited resources of both staff and time to make highest and best use of those limited resources. To have to, as Commissioner Scouten was noted, to have to abruptly end some work and carry it over for 4 months and then pick it back up is not effective for our use of staff, nor is it effective for the members of our community, business and individuals that have land use applications for us to entertain. So we will still probably use tools such as the work plan in order to figure out how we can best use the limited resources of both time and staff to do our land use and transportation planning work. So those are my comments. So we have a motion and we have a second. All those in favor of this resolution and order, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. The next and related item is an action item to adopt the resolution and order to adopt the ballot title and explanatory statement for the proposed amendment to Chapter 10, Section 103 of the Washington County Charter to come before the voters at the November 3rd, 2020 general election. Staff report.
Madam Chair, members of the board, yes, it's basically the same staff report as I just gave on the other explanatory statement and ballot title. But I would like to point out one change from the materials that were sent out to you earlier. And it was the chair brought up a very good point. In both the ballot title and explanatory statement, we put that they would be the current charter prohibits us from hearing land use ordinances for 30% of the year. And it was more effective, and we changed it to say 4 months. So I think that was the only change you'd see from the one you had before and what you got today, so.
Yep.
Thank you.
4 months on Exhibit A and then year-round on Exhibit B under the second section.
Right.
Great. Any commissioner comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting the resolution and order, please vote. Wait, did I forget to ask for a motion?
Move for adoption. Move for
Second.
adoption.
There we go. Thank you, Commissioner Rogers, for the motion and Commissioner Willie for the second. All those in favor of the motion, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you very much, colleagues. All righty, we are now into, well, pretty much getting to the home stretch here. We have another major item, 2 major items before us. The next is to consider an external proposal from the Washington County Kids Group for a Washington County Kids funded levy for fiscal year 2021-22 through fiscal year 2025, and direct the county administration and county council to draft ballot material. Do we have a staff report on this item?
We just have a summary at this point. This is a proposal levy, and excuse me, I lost my page here.
It's okay, take your time. I will note for the benefit of our community that we had a presentation at our work session, excuse me, last Tuesday by this external group, Washington County Kids. And from that, we commissioners had several questions of our staff. We had in our work session this afternoon, a agenda time with our staff to address those 4 key questions. That meeting was available for the public to listen to, as well as that information has been made available on our website as well.
Okay.
Staff report.
Sorry, I lost my page, but this is a proposal for a levy to provide programs for kids. And it would be a $125 million 5-year levy, and estimated to bring in approximately $24 million per year to support the levy. The funds would be allocated by a committee through an RFP process. The county Department of Health and Human Services Children and Families Division would administer the program and manage it for the material. And there are funds set aside in the proposal that would cover those costs to the county. The proposed tax rate is 35 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. And by the group's estimate, it would be approximately $104 for an average price home in the county. With that, I'd be prepared to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Rhodes from commissioners? No? Okay. I know we have someone in our audience who wishes to testify in the public hearing. How many people do we have signed up?
Chair Harrington, we have one. We have 9 people, Madam Chair.
For the person in the room, would you like to go first or wait or integrate in with the list that Kevin is managing?
We typically give electeds priority to come first.
You are an elected official, and our protocol generally gives you first dibs, but it's your choice. Okay, all right. So what we have here, ladies and gentlemen, is a hybrid for testimony on this item tonight. And so we were just talking through the logistics, and our board clerk, Kevin Moss, will help ensure that we take that public testimony. But before we do that, I would like to highlight all the written testimony that we have received. I believe we have 27, 31 different letters, 27 of those in support, 1 that's informational from the district attorney, and 3 that are opposed from the city of Beaverton, the city of Hillsborough, and the city of Sherwood, all city managers.
That is correct from the information we have received from the public, Madam Chair.
Okay. So we're going to, Mr. Rapplier, just want to check. We're going to take public testimony before we have a motion, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, great. So, Mr. Clerk, who's first?
Since the mayor gave discretion, we will start with Mayor Terry Leanhan of North Plains. Let me move him over.
Her.
Oh, my apologies.
I'll unmute now. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Mayor.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your time tonight, and good evening to the commission. My name is Terry Lenahan from the city of North Plains, and I am here tonight to urge the commission to take a pause on this proposed local option levy. As a parent and a grandparent, naturally I want what is best for my children and my grandchild. As a mayor, I want what is best for all children. Child development is multifaceted, as is the way to approach our decision-making for our children. As parents, we aren't always afforded the opportunity to take a deep breath and consider all sides when we make a decision. Tonight, I am asking you, the county commissioners, to take a pause, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, has this topic been fully vetted with the local leaders, constituents, and key players in the county? Has a coalition been organized to dive into the weeds of the needs of the community in order to identify the needs and wants of the county? There has been no outreach, to my knowledge, to local leaders to discuss the impacts of adding a new local option levy, and that is very concerning to me. Transparency is and should be fundamental. We're living in some very challenging times, and we are just learning what school might look like in the coming months. We don't know what after-school care could look like in 2020, nonetheless 2025. Yet this commission is asked to consider a future tax to do what? And who will be tasked to oversee this? In short, I'm not opposing the needs of our children. I'm opposing the process in which this item has been vetted or not vetted, and I'm opposing the financial consideration to our taxpayers. We're in the middle of a pandemic and our families are already strained financially. I would ask that the commission consider forming a coalition to discuss the needs in a thoughtful approach so that all key players can provide input. There are many mayors and other electeds who would welcome the opportunity to have those thoughtful discussions. Tonight, however, I stand with other mayors in Washington County who oppose this proposal. Let's plan together, and I appreciate your time and the opportunity to speak tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Lenahan. Kevin, who's next?
All right, Mayor Truax, would you like to go?
Welcome, and thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you. I've learned a number of things this evening. I do appreciate the auditor's comment about auditors being the ones who come in after the battle and bayonet the wounded. I'm going to have to work that into a State of the City address somewhere down the road. Chair Harrington, members of the commission, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm Pete Truax, and I'm the mayor of the city of Forest Grove, and I could probably truncate this by following Mayor Lenahan by saying what she said. I am speaking in some measured opposition to the proposal to put the kids measure on the ballot. I'm speaking for myself and a number of other mayors in Washington County, all of whom support our kids, make no mistake. And this measure has put us in a difficult position. Now, when I was a school teacher in Forest Grove, I knocked on numerous doors with information supporting operating levies in Forest Grove in those days before Measure 5. I like to think that at that time I fought for kids. I like to think now I would fight for kids. This measure gives me pause. Local government officials were given little or no opportunity to weigh in on this proposal. Unlike 2018, when we were consulted on a similar measure before the state legislature, I gained knowledge of this measure last Wednesday night when I was directed to the agenda for the commission's work session and regular board meeting. Shared that concern with my mayoral colleagues, and it was virtually unanimous that we were not formally notified of this proposal. Since this measure would compete with our own local ability to fund other vital services because of the increasing dependence on property taxes, we were concerned. We felt we ought to be part of the discussion. We're now in the midst of a pandemic. City governments, local service, and other special districts, county governments are all facing cuts of varying sizes, dependent upon the largesse of our partners in Washington, D.C. In addition, the state legislature is convening a special session concerned with, among other things, budget cuts, which I think we can all agree will be brutal and again dependent upon federal action. We heard this earlier this evening. We don't know what school will look like this fall concerning ready schools and safe learners. Indeed, we don't know what it will look like throughout the year. Why would we put together a program not knowing how it will match up with that all-important education? Because our crystal ball is very, very cloudy. Additionally, there's the current effort to gain passage of T-2020 to get us moving again. And even though that effort is not impacting property tax rates, it's still a public expenditure of some note. There's a great deal of support for this measure, as evidenced by the letters submitted tonight. I would hope that the measure would be redrafted, reworked, and resubmitted in such a way as to gain support from all of us so that we can provide programs for our kids. Unfortunately, again, some key members of the community have been left out in this advisory process. Appreciate the opportunity to appear before you and testify. Thank you for your time. Go Huskies.
You're lucky we let you in with that face mask, I gotta tell you.
For those of you who may not have the view we have, Mayor Truax has on a University of Washington mask, and his school is a rival school to Commissioner Willie with Washington State University.
Yeah, go Cougs, thanks, I get the last word.
So
You
it's
could
the-
also say that it's a rival school to University of Oregon, by the way.
Commissioner Treese's alma mater. So there you go. We've got the Ducks, we've got the Cougars, and we've got the Huskies in the room. All right, Mr. Moss, who's next?
All right, next up is Katie Riley, Madam Chair.
Ms. Riley, can you hear us?
I can. Good evening, Chair Harrington and members of the board. And my name is Katie Riley. I'm president of Washington County Kids. And I think there's been possibly some misunderstanding on the part of mayors. Throughout the process of developing this proposal, we have talked with most of the mayors individually and tried to incorporate their concerns. One of the things that I think needs to be really looked at here is that schools in the county are currently worried about having enough care for their employees. Nike, for instance, today announced that they were closing their own childcare site. So that means a further burden on available services for kids in the county. This proposal includes a well-tried structure and solid administrative foundation throughout the county. It has been used by the county and in other services, such as even the housing department, where they have a proposal that the priority be given to those services that are most in need. The amount that is requested is not enough to serve every child and family, but not every child needs this help. However, it is enough to make a difference. If it was lower, it would not make a difference in the lives of those who most need it, and also for employers. The money will be spent here in Washington County. It is an investment in our kids and our future. What impact do you want to have on this county? This is an opportunity to narrow the disparity gap, to keep kids out of the justice system, and to help the economy of the county. This is a win-win opportunity for the future of Washington County. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Riley. Who's next, Kevin?
All right, next, Madam Chair, we have Alex Diaz-Rios.
Mr. Diaz-Rios, can you hear us? Are you still muted? Alex, are you there?
They were there, but they disappeared from the list.
Okay, can you put him back at the end to see if he picks back up?
Yes, I will. Next, we have Tom Hughes.
Mr. Hughes, can you hear us? Tom, are you there? Unmuted? Mr. Hughes?
How's that?
Yep, we can hear you now, loud and clear, sir.
Cool. Hey, Madam Chair and members of the County Commission, thank you very much for allowing me to come tonight. I would say that normally I agree with Mayor Truax on everything except that Husky thing, go Ducks. But tonight we have a small disagreement about whether you should move forward on this or not. He and I share in common the past experience of spending many, many years of our adult life in high school, not trying to graduate, but trying to teach kids. And one of the things that I learned in that 30 years of teaching was that, not surprisingly, I suppose, that kids who came from families who were economically advantaged did better in school than kids who came to school from families who were economically disadvantaged. It was not a one-to-one, but and certainly personal effort entered into that. But by and large, on average, that was true. To the degree that there is a racial component of economic advantage and disadvantage, you can measure that in the school system by noting that white and Asian students tend to do better on average than African Americans, Native Americans, and Latinx. And that achievement gap that we've worried about, I think is one of the most severe problems that we look at in terms of the future of the United States going forward. Post-pandemic, we have to assume that that gap is going to get worse. Kids who are not, kids who are from families where they are used to using computers are better off in the distance learning situation than kids who come from families who do not have computers. Even if you give them computers now, and even if you give them training on it now, there's still going to be that gap. This proposal that we have before you tonight is actually ideally timed. If we were talking about something that you would pass tonight and tomorrow we'd start taking money out of people's bank accounts, I would say that's not appropriately timed. In this particular case, we're talking about a measure that takes effect in the next tax year. So if it's passed in November, it takes effect in 21-22, and the money becomes available in the school year 21-22. And that's exactly the time when the schools are going to be really hurting for opportunities to try to close that gap. They're going to look at the testing scores and the other measurements as they come out of it and realize when they get to when they reopen that gap has gotten much worse, and they're going to try to find opportunities. Before school and after school opportunities available to every kid is going to be the way we can close that gap.
I need you to finish up.
Yep, got it. I'm through.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Kevin, who's our fifth person?
Next, we have Dawn Doms on. So there's two of those screens. So let's see which one get. Dawn, can you hear us?
Dawn, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Well, we're going to need
There
one
we go.
of
Can you
your
hear me?
means. Yep. Thank you. The
Can you hear
feedback
me?
is now gone. Can you hear us?
Hello?
Oops.
So I'm Don Domes. Thank you, Chair Harrington, for allowing me to speak tonight, and commissioners. I'm a Washington County resident since 1976. Most of you know me as a CTE, vocational technical education teacher and advocate. I spent over 35 years in the classroom. Some also know that I'm a licensed tax and small business consultant for over 30 years. I needed to do something to help support my teaching hobby. I want to speak in favor of this tonight, and I want to emphasize some economic perspective. Number one, kids have missed a quarter of a year of school already. As we are seeing, they could miss much more. We need to have a backup plan to get more time with kids post COVID-19. Kids need positive adult interaction time with adults. The lost classroom time could create a 13-year rolling result of kids with less preparation for 40 to 60 years of adulthood. Essentially, we could be graduating 11th graders for the next dozen years with this loss of time. When school was in session, kids were only in school 14 to 17% of the time in the system prior to COVID-19. It's a mathematical imperative that we increase the opportunity for after school and summertime opportunities. We really owe the voters the opportunity to consider this. If it's not passed at the ballot box, then that's the voters' desire, but we need to give them the option. We've got to figure out a way to support this lost school time for kids. Thank you very much, and I urge your favorable vote on this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jones. Appreciate it.
Next up, Madam Chair, we have Susan Bender Phelps.
Can you hear us, Ms. Bender Phelps? Susan, are you off of mute?
I'm off mute.
Okay, we can hear you loud and clear. Please proceed. And by the way, we did receive your document in response to the work session last week.
Thank you very much. I'm very impressed by this whole process. This is my very first county commissioner meeting. The most I can say to our mayors and to you county commissioners, every child deserves an even playing field. And what we have learned is that when kids who live in low-income homes, kids who are impacted by racial inequity, don't have out-of-school time programs, it makes a difference. They lose ground. They lose, by the time they're in the 5th grade, they can lose up to a full year. What we've learned is when they attend summer programs, when they attend out-of-school time programs during the school year, they stay even. They have a fighting chance. And the truth is, if they're low-income kids, their parents need the fighting chance that having their kids in safe, reliable childcare gives them. And it's not just childcare. It's a whole gamut of services. We know that this kind of a levy works. It works in Portland. It works in King County. It works in San Francisco. It works in Florida. And when voters have the opportunity to choose, they love it and they keep renewing each 5-year period. Please give the voters of Washington County the option to choose. This is way bigger than just money. This is our future. And with COVID, it's going to be even more important. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bender Phelps. Kevin, it seems like we have a couple more to go.
We just have two more, Madam Chair. We have Mercedes Garcia again for you.
Oh, yes, this matter. Thank you. Ms. Garcia,
Yes, I'm here.
please proceed.
Okay. When I first heard about this program, I thought, how are they going to do that when our school staff is barely trying to figure out how to open schools safely and successfully? But then I thought, well, these people are educators too, so they're probably going to do their best to figure it out as well. I feel strongly that our county should provide full financial support for the Washington County Kids Program. Studies have shown and people have experienced the benefit to children when they have educational programs beyond the school day. As a retired educator, I have also witnessed the value in these programs for children who otherwise would not have access to these activities. I spent my entire life working in school systems where the children were mostly at poverty level. And I witnessed that when children are provided with educational activities and thereby kept from less desirable and possibly dangerous activities, not only do they benefit, but our community benefits as well. There would be decreased need for social, health, and police services, and parents could concentrate on work, knowing that their children are safe and engaged in positive activities. The chances that these children will grow to be productive adults increases. When a society invests in its children, the financial costs are returned, and we all live in a safer, healthier, happier community. The Washington County Kids Program is a very worthwhile investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. Kevin, who's next?
Bridget Koch is next, Madam Chair.
And Bridget, I want to reassure you that we did receive your signed letter from Adelante Mejeres.
Great. Thank you again, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I understand this is not an easy issue to address. We know that the needs of our community are ample and complicated. Still, in my role as Executive Director of a nonprofit whose mission is to respond to the needs of the children most in need in our county, it is my responsibility to continue to advocate for the resources families desperately need. Therefore, I want to express my support for putting the Washington County Kids Fund measure on the November ballot. Every year, Adelante Mujeres prepares children for school success, and every year we struggle to obtain the funding we need. Our results are life-changing. 96% of our preschool graduates are ready for kindergarten. 100% of the girls in our Chicas after-school program graduate from high school, with 98% attending secondary education. The children we serve would not accomplish these kinds of results if they didn't have the support that we're providing. We could do so much more, but the capacity of Adelante Mujeres and of all nonprofits is severely limited by the lack of funding. Just a week ago, we had to turn away a child, a little 2-year-old, whose parents combined make $25,000 a year. But that was several $1,000s more than would allow them to qualify to place him in Head Start. So what options do his parents have for quality childhood services? And therefore, we can ask what options he has of entering kindergarten ready to learn. The need for this funding is critical, and it's more critical now than ever under COVID-19. So I urge you to help us turn the corner for our kids. There is no better time to do this than now. Thank you for your commitment.
Thank you, Ms. Cook.
So, Madam Chair, I do not see Mr. Alex Diaz-Rios back on the list, so that concludes the public testimony on this item.
Okay, thank you. So we had 8 people testify this evening. Okay, so we've had our staff report. We've taken comment. What are the wishes of the commission?
I would move that we put this particular levy on the November ballot.
We have a motion. Is there a second? For purposes of discussion, the chair can second motion, so I'll second the motion. Are there any comments from commissioners?
Well,
Commissioner
let me start.
Go ahead, Commissioner
Yeah.
Skelton.
Yeah, I certainly wasn't privy to all the community involvement and discussions with the mayors, but I do know that the parties who have been involved with this effort have been working on this for years and years, and they have talked to every mover and shaker in this county. This has gone through a legislative process with respect to first establishing a district. There was a lot of objections by cities, and so that was this proposal reflects the concerns that have been raised by cities and other special districts across the state. So this is just straightforward now county levy. But to go back to my point a moment ago, this has been discussed in great detail to many people and to many parties, including the mayors, actually, over time. That we are kind of moving quickly now at this point in time. It's true, but we also, I don't think we really can wait another year or two on this. And as speakers in the past have noted, we've heard tonight, this is actually a very good time to be doing this. If we're looking and concerned about shortage of money and that we don't have the money to do the things we need to be doing, this is a measure to bring in additional funds. So this actually addresses the concern about the lack of funding and the concerns about that. Number two, I think the structure of this levy allows the kind of flexibility and the ability to go out for requests for proposals to many, many nonprofits and special districts and cities that would be able to provide these kinds of services on a request for proposal basis. That kind of flexibility will allow us on a year-to-year basis to see where the needs are, how circumstances change, whether we're living a COVID time or some other crisis in the future. We will need these programs to bring the equity and inclusion, really to make that reality. And we can talk about disparity, we can talk about how we care about the children, but we need to put our money where our mouth is. And we all need to make some small sacrifices. Most of us will make some very small sacrifices to make some truly meaningful differences for the children who have struggled, the generations in the past who have struggled with no fault of theirs, but their parents didn't have the capacity or the means to provide the kind of enrichment programs that are really part of what we need to see in our citizens and our future employees. So we've talked a lot about diversity, equity, inclusion. This is a place where we can actually put our money where our mouth is in a really meaningful way and provide some still relatively modest funding at a time and place where that money can really make a huge difference. We've heard a lot about ACEs. We've heard a lot about social determinants of health and about the importance of education in those early years. So we could either pay some money now, or unfortunately, some of our children will end up costing us a lot more money in our community corrections and other facilities. So the people who've organized this campaign have worked for years on this. There's no big secret here. Let's be honest. Let's just get this going. Let's get this done. I think this is really important for Washington County. So thank you.
Other commissioners, would you like to share any comments?
Sure. Happy to. I appreciate Commissioner Scouten's comments. I would concur with him that this has been an issue that's been before us before. I would just make two different points. One is one that I've made before around this table, and I know others disagree, but there's only a certain limited amount of funds that we all have. In the last year and a half, a little over, we've had a statewide cat tax that everyone thought that only certain people would pay, but it's not true. It's all being passed to us as individuals. Metro's had 3 measures, 2 homeless and a parks bond, all worthy causes. We now have a 4th one that's going to be on the ballot in November, again, a good cause. My own county here has had 2 measures, one for library and one for police services. I've had those same kinds of measures down in the Tigard area where I live. There's a limited amount of funds, and there are unlimited amounts of demand on those funds. So I'm fatigued with the taxes, and I think a lot of people are fatigued. The other issue is a compression issue. That I've heard from 3 mayors local in my area, and I know that we've had 2 mayors are outside my area, but we heard from them tonight. This is a compression issue costing the county about $600,000 in our levies. I don't know what's going to cost the cities, but it hasn't been really discussed. So, as I said the last time we discussed this, this doesn't diminish the work nor the need or anything else regarding the effort and the comments made tonight. But there is no amount of things that I can say that would say that this isn't valuable, because I think it is. But on the other hand, there's limited funds. There's fatigue. People are fatigued. And so I personally will be voting no.
There's no order here, so
You want to go?
I'm happy to go next if you want. I don't have to go last.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I feel like taking, can I take my mask off?
Please, I did. 'Cause I can't,
So I'm
nobody
not
can
so
nobody can hear me.
muddled. As noted by several here, in addition to the mayors, I had my chair and mayor's meeting with them yesterday, and they were all of the like mind of concern about compression. And I really understand that. Today in our work session and in the work session material for today's meeting, our staff helped us better understand the impact of compression. In the world of public finance, the impact of any compression is concerning. And what is the nature of compression? Well, 30 years ago, in 1990, when the voters approved Measure 5, that put impacts or restrictions on tax revenue collection here in our state, particularly with property taxes. And then it was followed up with refinements from Measures 47 and 50 in the 1990s. And so all of the public agencies have a right to be concerned because there is a financial impact to compression by virtue of those measures, which were also voter approved. As we learned about today, our great expert staff in our tax department here calculated that for all of the taxing districts here in Washington County, total compression would be just over almost $931,000. And that is for total budgets and tax collections in the millions. For example, for the 2 Washington County levies, just recently approved again by the voters, it would have added, if this Washington County Kids measure had been enacted, we would have experienced an additional $418,000 of compression. But that is on the revenue of 42 million raised by those levies. But it does add up, as we heard today, for the public safety levy. That's the equivalent of essentially 1 additional deputy that could be brought on. So this is a known problem, absolutely. But at the same time, I've thought about what these public assets are that we're talking about. The tax rate is assigned to each of our local community members, or agencies, excuse me. So the Washington County tax base is public property. We, on your elected Board of Commissioners, and our staff, the Washington County agency, We are stewards of that public asset, just as we are stewards of public trust. So we have allowed an external group the opportunity to come and make a proposal to us to take this proposal out to the voters. And just as with measures 5, 47, and 50, and all of the public levies that our cities and our various service districts have today, the voters are the ones who are the decision makers. Commissioner Rogers is right to point out that as a property owner, he is feeling fatigue with regard to taxes. No disagreement there whatsoever. I am really pleased with the level of community input that we've gotten in our short process here to receive the proposal and to act on that proposal in a timely manner. And the reason for action in this tight time frame is because the measure has to be submitted to the elections office here in a couple of weeks. One of my heroes in history was Thurgood Marshall, and he introduced me to a quote from Voltaire along the lines of, "Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good." As noted through the testimony tonight, as well as through these 31 submissions that we've gotten, this is a proposal that will help shape our future, if and only if the voters choose to approve it. Some can say, well, the timing is not good. It's not a good time, given that we are dealing with the economic crisis as a result of the coronavirus public health crisis. But when it comes to meeting the needs of our children, there's never a bad time. I see this as an opportunity for us to shape the future, us collectively, if we choose to. So this is an opportunity for us, each as voters, should this board have a majority to advance this tonight. It's an opportunity for us to have a positive impact, a positive future, an equitable future for the kids that make up our community today and into the years to come. I will be supporting this resolution and order tonight to provide for the opportunity for the voters to consider this and decide for themselves. Those are my comments. Thank you, colleagues.
I think I'm pretty much on record of what my comments are. I am supportive of Mayor Truax and Mayor Linehan's comment that I believe this should have been vetted through a more of a public aspect of it, the formation of a committee, including those elected that have certainly responsibilities to their own jurisdictions. And I firmly believe that the mayors, as well as each one of us, value and want to help the kids in every possible way they can. However, this is just not the right time for this because of the pandemic and the unemployment and everything else that comes about. And as far as the timing that former Mayor Hughes referred to, this levy could actually, over the next 6 months, this project could actually facilitate bringing together mayors and other community members, going through this with a much better fine-tooth comb, and submit this on a May ballot and still fall within the same timelines of collecting this money in November and putting it into place. So unless I'm not understanding something there, we could hit the pause button, facilitate all of the concerns, put it back on the ballot in May, and still make the timelines. But for as it is right now, again, Mayor Truax, I found out about this at the same time you did when I read the agenda. I'm not supportive of this and would highly recommend we wait until May.
Commissioner Treese?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to my colleagues for your thoughtful remarks on this. This has been a very difficult procedure for me. Providing needed resources for out-of-school and preschool programs for children in Washington County is very important to me. As many of you know, I began my career as a teacher. Kids and their needs are very near and dear to my heart. I understand the value that out-of-school and preschool programs bring to families, to communities, and even to our businesses. I greatly appreciate the continued effort that Washington County Kids has put forward to meet those needs. Your commitment is commendable, and I personally thank all of you for putting kids first. I have spent a great deal of time this past week talking to many people about this ballot measure, proposed ballot measure. I've spoken to educators, school board members, Washington County employees, librarians, city employees, mayors, and other elected officials both inside and outside of our county. I've learned from each conversation, and I greatly appreciate the willingness of so many to share their thoughts. And by the way, these were calls that I made to people as well as calls that came in to me. They shared their insights with me. I also appreciate that each person that I spoke with understood that I was in the process of making a decision, and they each granted me the opportunity to listen and learn from them. I've also read each testimony provided to us and listened closely to what has been said this evening. Thank you to everyone who took the time to provide your views through this public process. While I believe that the public should decide by their vote on issues like this, I also believe that the constituents of Washington County trust their commission to put forward a ballot measure that has been fully vetted and has the support of those entities that will be critical to successful implementation. It is incumbent upon me as a commissioner to make that examination. I'm not going to address the issue of tax compression. I believe that that's been addressed previously. I will say that in regard to compression, communication with our cities and our special district is the most critical issue. As co-chair of the Get Moving 2020 task force for 18 months, I learned firsthand the importance of collaboration and coalition building in order to achieve an end product that is supported by a deep cross-section of people and entities whose engagement is required for a successful outcome. In this proposal, I don't see the involvement and buy-in from entities that will be instrumental in the success of this program. I didn't see excitement and unified support from school districts and their school boards, and I want to emphasize unified support from school districts and their school boards, from the library system, and from the mayors and the cities of Washington County. It appears that the communication, the engagement, and support required of this referral wasn't reached. So as a Washington County Commissioner, I take my responsibility, as I mentioned earlier, to refer a measure to the ballot, to the upcoming ballot, very seriously. I have done a great deal of research and preparation. I am going to be voting no because I do not think that all the boxes have been checked to ensure the intended outcomes of this program. With that said, and with all due respect to the previous work done by Washington County Kids, I do invite a future process, and when I say future, I mean in the near future, that gains support from additional key members and key partners for this effort. And I would like to be involved in that process. So as I said, I'll be voting no, but I see the importance of this, and I am, excuse me, willing to be a part of an opportunity that brings all parties together to ensure the success.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any last statements from commissioners? Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the table. Let me make sure I get to my right page here. There is a motion and a second to adopt a proposal for a 5-year Washington County Kids Fund local option levy with its accompanying recommendations, budget, and estimated tax impacts, and then to continue this matter to August 4th, 2020, our next meeting, in order to direct the county administrative office and the county council to draft a ballot title and explanatory statement for your review and adoption on that date. What are the excuse me. Now it's time for a vote. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
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 The motion fails on a vote of 3-2. Thank you very much, colleagues, for your careful consideration. I appreciated all of your comments. Thank you to all who have written to us and testified here this evening as well. Appreciate it. All right, next we'll move on to our last action item for the evening, and this is a resolution and order allowing temporary business expansion into private parking lots during the COVID-19 emergency declaration, and this would apply to urban unincorporated Washington County only.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I think in the interest of time, we gave a briefing on this last week, and you've just captured the essence of the program. So Andy Back, our Planning and Development Services Manager, and I are both available if you have any questions or if you would like a brief staff report. We're happy to do that.
That is the voice of Stephen Roberts, our Director of Land Use and Transportation, for those who may only be listening. And I want to highlight that Exhibit A has been revised since the first publication of our agenda.
Madam Chair, if there's not a need for a statement from the staff, I would move for the recommended action.
Is there
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this resolution in order. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Back and Mr. Rhodes, for being here this late into the evening. Pardon me?
Oh, I was just waving. He was waving.
Mr. Roberts, sorry.
He was waving and I was waving back. No, Andy Back.
Okay. All right. So the next item on the agenda is our second oral communications. Do we have anyone signed up?
We do not, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. We'll skip over that then and move right on to board announcements. I'd like to announce our upcoming meetings per our county charter and rules of procedure. Our next meeting set will be next Tuesday, August 4th, with a work session at 8:30 in the morning. Our board meeting will be at 10 in the morning, and that'll be brought to you as Zoom, or via Zoom. Then on Tuesday, August 11th, we have a work session only that starts at 8:30 in the morning. That a couple days later, Thursday, August 13th, we'll be having a roundtable that starts at 1 p.m. Then the following Tuesday, we have another set of meetings. August 18th, work session at 8:30 in the morning, board meeting at 10 a.m. Are there any other board announcements this evening? Ooh, I'm losing my voice. Seeing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Thank you, commissioners. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye. Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Thank you, Commissioner Scouten. It's unanimous, 5-0. We're hereby adjourned. Thank you. Good night, everyone.